We have with us Branimir Rakic, who will be discussing Semantic Substrate, building with decentralized knowledge graph. So Branimir, please take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So my name is Branimir. I'm one of the founders and the CTO of Trace Labs, who are the core developers of OriginTrail. And today I'll be speaking a bit about what that means for Substrate and what particularly building with the decentralized knowledge graph means. So I'll jump really quick into a bit of evolution. I think we all kind of know this, but I want to restate what it meant to go from the original Web 1, which was about document exchange, all the way to today. So we kind of transitioned towards this Web 2, which was about web of interactions, or the social web, where basically we all kind of live today, and we all know that social networks tend to use and sometimes even abuse a lot of the data that we actually get to exchange over the internet. So it's no longer just document exchange, it's really about interactions. And then Web 3 was all of the stuff we're talking about here today. But actually, I would like to say that it's a little bit wider than that. Web 3 is actually about meaning and value exchange, or as it was originally dubbed, the semantic web. So apart from obviously asset ownership, data ownership, identity ownership, as we've seen in a bunch of the presentations prior to this one, it is about value exchange, but as much so also about meaning. And actually, we heard about this from Tim Berners-Lee himself, the inventor of the World Wide Web, who actually gave us a technological stack for it. So he invented this layered structure of the semantic web, or what he called Web 3, 20 years ago, with some probably very familiar components such as URIs, cryptography, obviously, but also some very interesting ones which are targeted towards semantics and meaning, such as ontologies, query languages like Sparkle, data interchange formats. And then finally on top, like as the icing on the cake, he sort of put a layer of proof and trust, right? And although he was very visionary at the time when he was making this, we didn't have what we have in the Web3 today. So all of the trust protocols that we're all building together. And what we would actually like to argue that it was that he got it right. We just have much better tools and a better idea of what Web3 looks like today. But basically, if we talk about this trust, I'm not going to explain what blockchains are. Trust me, I'm sure everybody knows on this on this event what blockchains are. But I want to emphasize in one sentence that they are trust networks. And basically that means we have decentralized stateful protocols compared to, for example, HTTP, which is stateless. So we have stateful protocols where we share verifiable state somehow among us. And then we are able to build on top of that, including applications, all kinds of smart contracts and goodies that we've seen over the course of this event. But just as blockchains are trust networks, knowledge graphs are semantic networks. And that means basically that we're no longer talking about strings, we're talking about things. And in that sense, we're moving from this notion of raw data to actually highly structured knowledge. And companies such as Facebook, Google, eBay, Amazon, all of these Web 2 giants have been using these technologies, knowledge graphs or KGs, to extract value from their platform's data. It's basically the data structure that is the core of their business. Amazon uses it for recommendations. Google uses it for search, also to learn how to improve its own search, basically all on this layer of semantic, machine readable and machine understandable data. So, all right, at OriginTrail, what we really are doing is we're building the world's first decentralized knowledge graph. So what does OriginTrail then do? Well, basically it's organizing humanity's most important assets, making them discoverable, verifiable, and valuable. And in a sense, it's the decentralized semantic layer, which is synergizing knowledge graphs and blockchains, merging the value propositions of the two. Actually, today, OriginTrail is already a live network for several years. It's a permissionless network. It's completely open and open source, and it's run by over 2,000 different participants or people running nodes around the world by the OriginTrail community. And essentially, the way OriginTrail works is that it connects to multiple blockchains. So it's by itself, it's a decentralized knowledge graph. It's not a blockchain. And currently, it actually interoperates with Ethereum, XDAI, and Polygon blockchains. Soon, hopefully, as well with Polkadot, on which we've been working for quite some time, both through the Substrate Builders program, but also through our own internal projects. Now, the point here is that the decentralized knowledge graph provides this layer of semantics, which together with all of these blockchains that it interoperates with, enables the utilization of the power of knowledge graphs in Web3 applications. Now, going a little bit into more details, what this means is that we have highly structured, machine understandable, verifiable data. And essentially, this decentralized knowledge graph represents an interlinked collection of verifiable assertions or claims, which are based on URIs or DIDs. For those of you familiar with DIDs, you will also know that those are interoperable. But for those of you who are not, DIDs are basically the decentralized version of identifiers that are formally actually defined by W3C and the Semantic web community. And essentially, they enable identity ownership. But also, apart from this, the whole point of this knowledge graph, actual interconnectivity of data, is semantic representation. So the ability to represent information in a highly structured way as graphs. And that comes down to really focusing on creating something called data triples, meaning subject, predicate, object relations, or subject property object, as some people call it, where essentially you're able to explain, or let's say, or describe any sort of interaction. You could, for example, say that subject, myself, Branimir, is giving a presentation, which is an object. And through this very flexible system of triples, you're able to basically generate graphs of anything. Now, in these triples, you use these identifiers, which are DIDs or URIs, to actually make sure that you refer to the same entities. And this enables data integration and actually vast growth of data around a similar asset or object. All right, I think I lost. Oh, no, I didn't. All right, all of this is tied in together with verifiable credentials. So, which is another W3C recommendation, essentially enabling verifiability of these claims. And for the decentralized knowledge graph, that is actually done on the level of the graph. But basically, that means we have a global asset knowledge graph, which essentially has a decentralized public index, which is used for discoverability. So think of what was Web 2 Google index, where Google goes around and scrapes the whole internet and somehow indexes this information, so it's easier for us to use it for search. That is the decentralized public index. That is the function, in a way, of what the decentralized public index does in the decentralized knowledge graph. Also, private data graphs. So not all data is public. The ability to actually connect privately held graphs into the same knowledge graph is one of the key properties of the decentralized knowledge graph. So, which actually quite a few enterprises are using. Yet again, still getting the verifiability and discoverability features that they need. And obviously, having cryptographic proofs then available on chain. So the data in the graph itself is in the decentralized knowledge graph network. However, the proofs are available on these chains. And with these proofs, you can do quite a few interesting things. For example, verify that a certain timestamp data set has had a certain form or piece of that data set, or more precisely, information about a certain entity or asset. And that could be verifiable directly into a smart contract, because these actually Merkle tree proofs are available. And then finally, graph services, which are one of the coolest things around, which enable all kinds of great things, from things like Google PageRank, which is quite an old I believe, known thing, but also all kinds of NLP, and even going into ML-like things where the actual base of this is all in the graph and highly structured. So basically, we have knowledge graph queries with blockchain powers. So what can we do? Well, we can query the network for asset graphs. That means we can resolve by DID, or we can search by keywords. For example, a certain asset like an NFT could have associated tags, and you would be able to search it by these tags, or identifiers, or any type of interesting values. But also just generally shoot any fully fledged queries. Think of your old school select star from something in SQL or GraphQL queries. And actually GraphQL and Sparkle are what is coming up in the next version of OriginTrail. And with this, we're able to query any single asset in the graph in several different ways, but the last fully fledged query one actually enables all kinds of various basically extractions of knowledge from this knowledge graph. So what actually we are able to also get here, apart from the queries, is to get asset integrity proofs, verify this in off-chain or on-chain, but also in the off-chain module, which I'll present a little bit today, and let you know that where you can see it. And if you look on the right, you'll actually see a very simplified, basically interface where through the what we call the DKG client, you're able to publish and query the decentralized knowledge graph either throughout the whole network, or actually query for a history, or what we call the trail of a specific object, hence OriginTrail. So, all right, let me load this already. So essentially what we have built so far for Substrate, and which is available for all Substrate chains, is a very new DKG decentralized knowledge graph off-chain worker pallet, which can be used by any Kusama or Polkadot chain to query for assets, or to publish assets data to the decentralized knowledge graph, and then being able to use it in the other direction, so to query it in the ways I just described for verifiable assertion graphs, meaning data and proofs, and then doing one of two very wide concepts. One is actually process all this, verify this query result, and propose and do some action off-chain in the actual off-chain worker palette, and then submit the result in a transaction extrinsic to the runtime, or actually go ahead from the get-go and submit it in the runtime and verify it in the contract, and actually execute some logic based on that. We actually have the first version of the DKB-offchain-worker palette available on GitHub. I'll show the link very soon, so you can go check it out. But just to give a bit more context, what this could be, for example, the previous presentation where we heard Engine talking about NFTs, think of the Engine or Engine-like chain querying for asset or NFT information that is highly structured in a graph hosted on the decentralized knowledge graph, or Akala applications who actually submit either this information to the graph and index it in that way so that it's easily usable and discoverable, and vice versa, ingest information in an Oracle-like fashion from the decentralized knowledge graph. How am I on time? I have about 10 minutes, right? With questions. Okay. So moving forward, the DKB-offchain-worker palette, what it basically does, it implements the support for the decentralized knowledge graph API, and it is prototyped with the OriginTrail parachain implementation, which we've been actually working on for quite some time. It is actually an EVM-compatible parachain, so we're also working on that compatibility. There's also a Rust crate available that is completely separate, but also highly usable. And in the coming roadmap, what we are working on is, as mentioned, compatibility with the EVM palette, provisioning verifiable credential graphs directly from Substrate-based chains. So basically anybody running Kusama or Polkadot parachains would be able to provision these highly structured graphs and take the load off the chain while still remain verifiable, highly structured information available to it. And obvious next step is really data marketplace support. So we've been working on much of these protocols so far, one of which is actually obviously fully decentralized implementation of something called FairSwap, which is the ability which gives you the ability to trade data for tokens. Well, in this way, what we get unlocked further is the set of knowledge tools, which are there to enable knowledge marketplaces and these queries to be payable. And in that sense, getting the ability to both monetize available data as well as to synergize or actually crowdsource new data based on the queries in the graph, much like Google is using the query analysis that also is available through the decentralized knowledge graph. Finally, a lot of this comes together with support for OriginTrail v6. So we're entering version 6 this year, and we're very excited to be releasing that, including the Sparkle GraphQL and other supported new goodies coming. But anyhow, not to stop too much there. Basically, you can just go ahead to our GitHub, you can check it out. You can find the code for the off-chain-worker pallet, and you can give it a go and test yourself. And if you'd like to get any assistance or have any questions, feel free to approach us either in Sub0 chat or our own Discord at OriginTrail, which has quite a vibrant OriginTrail community and a lot of node runners around. So there will be definitely people to support you. So what can you do with OriginTrail? Zooming out a little bit. You can build with Semantic high-quality verifiable data, as explained previously. You can also publish verifiable claims as much as any other data knowledge graph publishing is happening, but in a decentralized way. What is really powerful is then we get the ability to integrate data easily across the Web3 and seamlessly, especially in Web3 where sometimes there's a bunch of shared identifiers around. So identifiers such as cryptographic hashes, the ability to integrate this is one of the core capabilities of any knowledge graph, and especially the decentralized knowledge graph. Then easily build privacy-first, metaverse-ready apps, the ability to discover and crowdsource high-quality data sets, as I said. So basically think of the capability to look for something very highly structured and meaningful for your particular use case. You'll be able to actually ask the community to crowdsource that. And then finally, tokenizing the dynamic assets, tokenizing these asset graphs, which are in themselves attached to the assets that they are describing in this semantic way. Now, the core concept here is that OriginTrail actually operates on the network effect. So the graph synergizes data and actually makes this even more valuable. So as information is inherently valuable, connected information is actually more valuable. So the decentralized knowledge graph unlocks this Metcalfe's law of network effects. The network effects meaning that we can actually discover this, we can verify all of this data, and we can assess the value of all of these represented assets. And if you haven't heard of Metcalfe's law, this on the right, you can see it. It says that the value of a network is proportional to the square of the number of participants in the network, which has actually been proven many times ever since the inception of Ethernet, which was created by Bob Metcalfe, who the law is named after, and who is, by the way, one of our advisors. But also other networks such as social networks, Facebook growth. You can correlate basically the growth of the number of users in Facebook with literally this function, which is very proportional to the growth of their revenue. And many other proofs, not to go too much into Metcalfe's law. What we aim here is to harness the network effects on the data level. So integrating all of this and using it in the way Google, Facebook, Amazon, and all these big Web2 companies have managed to use it or sometimes even abuse it. I also want to add a small quote there for the co-founder of Intel, Robert Noyce, who actually says that knowledge is power, but knowledge shared is power multiplied. And that is exactly how we see the network effects in knowledge graphs. OriginTrail is already being actually used in quite a lot of places, including the British Standards Institution, Swiss Railway Company, the SCAN Association, which encompasses the global biggest retailers such as Walmart, Target, Home Depot. We have a lot of interesting material on if you're interested in seeing how they use it. And this is, by the way, all production use cases. So OriginTrail has been proven quite a lot. And there's also quite a lot of support by organizations such as Walmart. We got their Food Safety and Collaboration Center Award. British Standards Institution is we're their exclusive partner for blockchain technologies. Oracle and the World Economic Forum have also been supporters of OriginTrail, and actually World Economic Forum helping a data crowdsourcing campaign for trusted COVID essential supplies during the pandemic. Anyhow, it's not just for organizations. This technology is, like I said, again, open source, permissionless. It gives the power of Web2 giants that have knowledge graphs to the decentralized world, and anybody can use it as long as they're able to basically have the value from the data that the vast Web3 is actually constantly growing and cultivating. With that, I'd like to finish and invite you on to join us on this journey of going really from this Web 2 to the semantic Web 3 and adding more knowledge into our systems, into moving from strings to things, adding them value and making them discoverable, verifiable, and finally valuable. Thank you very much. And yeah, for more information, feel free to ping me anywhere, Twitter, Discord, and visit our website. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Branimir. We actually have quite a few questions. We're not going to have time to get through all of them, but I do want to go through a few. First off, one person had asked about when Sparkle support will be added. I think you said in V6, but was there a date or approximate date given? Or did I miss that?
Yeah, so I didn't mention it, but the aim is to release the 6.0 version of OriginTrail latest by the end of this year, and that will contain Sparkle support from the get-go. So hope that satisfies the audience.
Yeah. And if not, I guess they can reach out to you as you already mentioned.
Absolutely.
We had another question about the data storage capacity. Like as the distributed graph grows, like what has been like the size of the data? Like how fast has this been growing?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So perhaps before just jumping into the size, a little bit about how data is managed. So just so a lot of people ask us and think that the centralized knowledge graph operates the same as a blockchain and then kind of replicates all the data all over the place at the same time. It's much more akin to, let's say, IPFS in that sense, but as well as content distributes according to content address around the network and then replicates it with a fairly large replication factor. And in that sense, saves a lot on capacity. So we don't necessarily have the same constraints as in blockchain. And the graph has been growing quite significantly in the last year. What we use for the metric, though, is not necessarily data, which is quite big, but it's actually something we call total graph size, which aims to measure the amount of knowledge in the graph. So not just raw data, not just, let's say, kilograms, but rather how many connected entities we have in the graph. And the total graph size actually counts all of the entities and all of their connections together. And if I'm not mistaken, it's close to 70 million right now, which is quite large for such, let's say, a young knowledge graph. And yeah, it's growing steadily. I think it's during this year, we should see around 100+ million entities basically in the graph.
Well, thank you very much, Branimir. As I mentioned, there were quite a few questions I couldn't get to, so I'm sure you have your work cut out for you answering them.
Thank you very
thank
much.
you again.
Feel free to shoot any questions in the Discord. I'll be around.